Well, we survived. It's 12 days since Hurricane Fiona kicked the stuffing out of PEI. It was bad. It was the worst. I'm a Canadian. I'm used to some big storms. Mostly in the winter we get huge blizzards. So you know how to. They're nothing new. This is the first time I can honestly say I was terrified. um, we were lucky. We our house is intact. We actually had very minimal damage. We lost a couple trees in our yard, and the power was off for a week. Actually, the power is still off for an awful lot of people on Prince Edward Island right now, like 10,000 customers, something like that. So that, however many people that is, 10,000 households and businesses. That's still a lot of people. We lost everything in our refrigerator. We lost everything in our freezer. We didn't really lose our minds. We cleaned up as best we could while the power was out. One thing I really noticed was that people came together and helped each other as best they could. Walking around our neighborhood, there was a lot of damage. So what this video is going to be about is some of the things that got me through Hurricane Fiona. Maybe it's a top 5 video. But one of the most important things, I guess, would be neighbors. You would walk down the street and you'd say, oh, well, there isn't that much damage, but then you would step into the backyard of someone and there'd be 7 trees down, quite often on their decks or on their house. And you'd see the fact that they lost part of the roof, like the shingles were gone and things like that. And there was just this huge mess to clean up. So a lot of it was dealt with by professionals, but a lot of it also was dealt by neighbors who just came together and formed teams and started cutting and hauling. And my next door neighbor who owns the house, he rents it out, showed up with a chainsaw. And so everybody sort of got together and we went to all the yards pretty much around us and dragged trees for 3 days, something like that. We're not, and it's still not even done really. There's still trees down in yards around here, and some of them are going to require professionals to do it because Charlottetown has some huge trees, like old trees, and a lot of them are down. A lot of them are down on top of houses. A lot of them are down on top of decks or in yards or in driveways. And most of the streets have been cleared. The Brighton area of Charlottetown is heavily, I don't know, I have them down, but I know that an awful lot of large trees came down there, and there were still people without power down there. So the things that got me through the storm. Well, actually, we didn't have a generator, and I'm okay with that. A lot of people did have generators. There was some accidents with generators, people with carbon monoxide poisoning and just stuff. I didn't have a chainsaw, but I had our neighbor did, and there were some injuries due to chainsaws. The sirens were going all day long, like emergency vehicles and fire engines and ambulances and police cars. So some people got injured with their chainsaws. But if somebody knows how to use it, that's a good thing to know, to have, good skill to learn. We did have a barbecue, and we do have a wood stove. Our house, like I said, is intact. We have a metal roof on it, our house, and not all metal roofs held up. Some of them were ripped apart, but ours held up, and it's good to have. But one thing we did have was a wood stove, and a little bit of wood left over from last year. So in the mornings it was pretty cold, and it's still cold for a lot of people on Prince Edward Island. But what we did was we would toss in some wood, toss some pans of water on, boil some water. We could boil an egg. We could make rice. We could heat things up on top of the stove, and there were certain things that I didn't even realize, like I that were important to have. And one of the great things, like before the storm, everybody's running around buying canned goods, and I've bought these before, but I bought some just before the storm, just thinking this might come in handy. And bag of small potatoes from the Little Potato Company. I'm not paid by these people to promote their products, but I'm just telling you what I found very helpful. We usually potatoes, you could bake a potato, but I found that the little potatoes, we could wrap them in tin foil, put them on the coals in our wood stove, and they'd be ready in like 15 minutes. And it really was nice to have some hot food, some tasty food. And we just wrapped it. My son actually was really into preparing them, poking holes in them and putting some seasoning on and a little bit of water and oil, and you wrap them up, and then we put them in, and you turn them a couple times, and they tended to take about 15 minutes, and they were so delicious. Really lifted our spirits. The wood stove was really great to have, but at the same time, we also had a barbecue, so we were trying to cook things that were in the fridge that we knew we were going to lose for the first couple of days. And it was good to have a barbecue. So if you in the future, if you have like a camping stove of some kind, that would be a good thing to have in a hurricane. One other thing we had, and I had bought these a couple of years ago. I don't know if you can see this. This is a lantern. It's an Energizer lantern. We've had different ones over the years. And this thing, I have to be honest, I'm going to go out and buy more of these. I'm going to buy it. We have two. We had other lanterns. We had other flashlights. We had candles. All our candles are gone now. We went through them all, because it got dark really early. Around 7 o'clock, it gets dark, and it's not bright until 7 in the morning now. And it gets pretty dark. So we went through all our candles, and we had these going all the time. And it's just 3 double D batteries, I believe, in it. And it didn't run down. It's an LED light. It has several settings, and that was actually one of the things I really liked about this Energizer lantern. The first setting, I just blinded myself. The first setting is very bright, but then you hit the button again, and it goes down a bit. But the one thing I really appreciated about this is it had a nightlight setting. So a very soft setting. So we just left these on all night, just in the pathways where, the bathroom, for instance. And it was really handy. So I'm going to be buying, as soon as they're in the store, I'm just going to be restocking. I'm probably going to have one of these for every room in the house. But it really came in handy. Like I said, because it has an LED light in it, you could turn it on full blast. And like this thing had been running all the time, and it's still bright. And that was over a week of heavy use, and running all night, because it probably doesn't take much on the nightlight setting, but it was on all night. And it was good to have, because candles are okay if you're monitoring them, but they can really, you don't want to leave a candle burning all night long. And it was dark. Like, all power was out on Prince Edward Island. So as soon as it got dark the first few days, you couldn't, if you stepped outside at night, it was black. There was nothing you could see. It was dangerous. There was stuff everywhere. There were trees down. It was really kind of dangerous to step outside. It was dangerous to get in a car and drive, because there was so much stuff down, blocking the roads. And it was just hard to find your way around at times, because you'd come across roads blocked, and you'd be doubling back and trying to find them. You were in a maze, and there were, stuff was everywhere, and there were people walking around, and there were people just trying to get places. And it was rough. There were a lot of people, homeless people that were in rough shape. They were trying to get to shelters, and it was really sad. And there's going to be a lot more people that are going to have to be rehoused because a lot of apartment buildings are damaged and a lot of homes are damaged. And in my neighborhood, the damage doesn't look too bad, but then two streets over, there's a house completely flattened. The person in it got out, but his house is destroyed. So, there's going to be a lot of people looking for temporary housing, and we already have a shortage on PEI for housing. So the other, I was journaling through it all. So I was using, this is a fountain pen channel, so I'm trying to get some fountain pen stuff in. So I was using my Pilot Custom 74, and I was using this Schaefer snorkel a lot. Just sort of writing in my journal what was going on each day, progress and how the storm was and things like that. So it was kind of handy to have that. Working in my place from 1917. I have to be honest, the last, 4 years, my journals make for some interesting and bleak reading at times. Like, there's some good stuff. There's a lot of good stuff in my journals, like good things that have happened, but it just seems endless. It's like you go from COVID to, major wars and climate change and forest fires and storms and things like that. So my journal was really handy. Felt good to write down these things. It'll be very interesting to come back to these journals in a few years and look through them, read them again. Just memory is sort of fleeting in some ways. You forget things, and your memory is really the last memory you had of something, and unless you really dive deep. But so the writing in my journal was very good. Using my pens were good. I was drawing with the Schaefer snorkel the other day, which felt nice. But yeah, I tended to use the Schaefer snorkel, and I tended to use the Custom 74. Oh, and I used my E95S a lot, just writing. And I used all my pens, but those are the ones that I used the most. So the things that got me through the storm: wood stove. I'm not going to show you my wood stove. It's pretty dirty at the moment. Little potatoes. Anytime there's going to be a storm, I'm going to grab some little potatoes because I know I can just toss them in the into the wood stove. Wrap them up tight, and when the embers are nice and hot, just set them on the embers, and they'll cook. They didn't even burn; like they cooked through. Whereas a larger potato would probably be black on one side in the stove. I'm going to get more of these Energizer lanterns. I'm not, because the kids really appreciated these. I appreciated these, so I'll get one for each person in the house. We just had 2 at the moment, but power doesn't go off for very long. Sometimes, a couple of days at the most. Usually, blizzard. But when you see the infrastructure collapsing like it did on Prince Edward Island, it's good to have lanterns. So I'll be restocking these. I'll be restocking the batteries. I'll get more candles too. Those things are good to hand. When the storm happened, we lost all communications. Our landline was down, and our cell phones didn't work. You couldn't even phone 911. I don't know what's going to happen there. It was about 2 days before we had stable. It was 2 days before we had stable cell phones, and even then, you would call somebody and you couldn't get through sometimes. There was no internet, of course. So in some ways, on Prince Edward Island, everything we know was at the time was very sketchy. We didn't know how bad it was. When you did get a little bit of connection, you would be kind of shocked. Whole forests are gone. houses that were destroyed, cottages were washed into the ocean, buildings were washed, like cottages were washed off the shore up into the roads and the highways on the North Shore. You see a lot of people building, like when I was young, you didn't actually see too many cottages or homes on the shore. You see it now. People come here and they think, "Oh, what a beautiful place!" You know, this is a rant. People come to Prince Edward Island and they don't realize that it's a beautiful place in the summer. I often say to friends, it's like there used to be a saying that you had to be born here to be an islander, and I say to people, if you can get through March on Prince Edward Island, get through a year, endure the winter, you're an islander. You've earned the right to call yourself from here. I don't care where you've come from. If you're able to endure the misery of Prince Edward Island winters and springs and falls, you're an islander. And a lot of people really stepped up. Like there were so many great people just, jumping in and making food for people and hot meals. And a lot of newcomers were just jumping in and helping. But you see people though, where they buy shorefront property and they build a house right next to the dunes, or in some cases, essentially on the dunes. And on the North Shore, in this storm, the dunes were stripped away, and a lot of those buildings were washed away. You see them building like what is obviously a flood zone. Don't move inland. There's going to be a lot of people like. My biggest worry right now is because of the fact that our sand dunes is stripped away. We're going to have more and more ocean water coming in and washing away at a lot of places. There's also a huge number of forests down and trees down, and there's a lot of brush around. So who knows? We could be having forest fire problems next year. But anyway, okay. I'm ranting. Sorry. We're good though. But actually, okay. So back to what got me through the storm. The last thing that got me through the storm. And because we had a wood stove, and because I really need coffee, this year I bought a stainless steel coffee percolator. And the brand is Lagostina. And this thing was great. I could fill it with, it's a percolator. I don't have the basket. I wash the basket. There's a metal basket. You put your coffee grounds in, you pour water in, close it up, you set it on it. When the water boils, it percolates. And it makes a great cup of coffee. On the wood stove, because the wood stove has to heat up, it would take a little while, but within less than an hour, I could have after lighting the wood stove in the morning, I could have a very hot, nice cup of coffee. And this is probably the one thing that really got me through the day in some ways, personally. A metal percolator. You can get them in glass. I wouldn't recommend glass. If you can get a metal one, get a metal one. Because you could set that on a barbecue. You could set that on a camp stove. You could set that on a campfire. It's going to do the job. It's well made. It's attractive. It makes, I'm not a fancy coffee drinker. I just love coffee, but I'm not a connoisseur. So I just put whatever brand is on sale in it, but it still makes a nice tasting cup of coffee for me. And that was one of the things that really got me through this storm. But so to recap, little potatoes, good lanterns, good journal, good pens, and a nice cup of coffee. So hopefully in the coming weeks, in the coming days, most people will have their power back on. And, it's going to be a little while before we're all cleaned up. The island's going to look different. It's going to feel different. North Shore, I haven't even been up there yet. And, it's going to be kind of sad to see some of the beaches that I'm still familiar with destroyed. But we're still good. And we've learned some lessons, and I know what to do going forward and how to prepare for the next storm. And you know what? There will be the next storm. So anyway, on that note, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. It was kind of a downer in some ways. And I'll be doing more fountain pen content, don't worry. And I have some letters I have to write. I'm way behind on things like that. I have messages on my YouTube channel. I'll try to get to respond to those. I'm a little bit behind. But, it was good to have some pens to write with. It was good to have some food. It was good to be able to stay warm. It's good to have a roof over your head. And I'm luckier than an awful lot of people. And, it's sad, but a lot of people out there really need help. So anyway, on that note, I hope you have a good day. Talk to you soon. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.